Good evening and welcome to live coverage of the final round of the RWB International Constructors Championship. I'm Rob Lomas and I am back for this week after taking a week off as I was slightly incapable of talking. But no, I am back and this is the last couple of minutes of qualifying here at Mount Panorama. We're currently watching Eddie Warden as he heads through Forest Selbo onto the Comrade Straight in the Lamborghini Huracan. Quick update for you of the standings as we have a couple of minutes left in qualifying. It's still Jack Alexander leading the Drivers' Championship ahead of Crawford Brown, James Lacey, Emo Plates, Hugo Gomez, Sam Kruger, Nathaniel Shirley, Eddie Warden, Dan Birch and Marco Badowski. That's your top 10 in the Drivers' standings. Crucially, in the team standings, Porsche are still leading just ahead of Nissan by about just under 100 points. Still relatively close in the battle for third place between Lamborghini and BMW, so a good weekend for one manufacturer or the other could see them jump up the table. Mercedes in fifth place, also within touching distance somewhat of BMW. Lamborghini on 832 points, BMW on 814 and Mercedes on 786. Then there's a bit of a jump down to Lexus on 668 points. In seventh place we have Audi on 597, Bentley only 10 points behind on 587. Then we have another bit of a jump down to McLaren on 510 points, and then we get even further down to Ferrari on 477. Currently on board the Ferrari of Emo at the moment. And then in 11th place we have Aston Martin on 384 points. And rounding out the table we have Jaguar on 291. Jaguar should be somewhat okay here though, because there are some very, very long straights. So the it should suffice okay. Qualifying session has finished on the clock. We're just waiting for, well, I say we're just waiting for the last few cars to set a lap time. There's still a few drivers on a lap at the moment. Eddie Warden, Emo Plate, Jack Alexander as well. Alexander back in the Porsche. Harry Hottie jumps up to 8th quickest there in the 33 Lamborghini. Lacey currently in 5th. McDonald putting in a good run to go 4th. Gomez 3rd. Newcomer 2nd at the moment. Eddie Warden on pole as things stand. There's Sergio Lemke just going 8th at the moment in the Mercedes, although he gets bumped down by Crawford Brown. Crawford saying in the Discord server earlier that he wasn't expecting to be terribly competitive here, although one suspects he may have been bluffing slightly. Currently looking at Damien Lowe in the Mercedes. Coming through the final corner now, Murray's Corner. Good exit out of there to go up into 15th. And we're still waiting on one more car to cross the line, which will be now. And judging by the fact that everyone's moved down a spot, I can only imagine that Jack Alexander has only gone 2nd. Very interesting indeed. So it's Eddie Warden from Jack Alexander on the front row of the grid for Lamborghini and Porsche. Then Crawford Brown in 3rd. Nate Newcomer 4th in the big Jaguar. Hugo Gomez in 5th, ahead of McDonald in 6th. That's BMW and Aston Martin. James Lacey is in 7th place in the Porsche, ahead of Emo Plate in the Ferrari. And the top 10 is rounded out by Samuel Kruger and Niels Jun. in the Mercedes and the McLaren, respectively. Sergio Lemke is in 11th place in the Mercedes ahead of Nathaniel Shirley in the BMW. Joy is in 13th in the Lexus, ahead of Harry Hotti in the Lamborghini. Then it's Berno Reitzman in the Nissan, Damien Lowe in the Mercedes, Dan Birch, Adam Kajowski, Toby Atkinson representing Mercedes, Nissan, and then rounding out the top 20, it's Magnus Dahlgren in the Audi and Kevin Shepherd in the BMW. João Carapo is in 21st in the McLaren ahead of Billy Hutchinson in the Porsche, and Xavier Eugeni is in 23rd in the Jaguar. And that's as far down as I can see at the moment. Cars currently on the grid here, waiting for start of the race. Not entirely sure what's happened here, given that Crawford is currently behind Eddie at the moment, so I can definitely see the silhouette of a Lamborghini in its Lexus, in its standard British police issue livery behind a Lamborghini. And then a great big gap in front of Nate's Jaguar. Jaguar doing rather well here, actually. It was also very competitive in the 12 hours at the, or rather the 9, or was it 12? I think it was 12 hours at the start of the, was it the start of the Endurance Championship? I think it, or the charity race. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But the Jaguar has historically gone very well around here, so could be one to watch from Nate. He's in a very, very good starting position on the grid as well. Throw the phone on charge quickly before the start, as you do. Currently got the camera focused on Nathaniel Shirley's BMW, which you can see in front of the Lamborghini at the moment as everyone drops off the air jacks. As we get ready for the start of the race in about 20 seconds or so's time. 55-minute race, 2 pit stops as ever. And the whole field pulling away now. And everyone is now having to swap positions somewhat. So coming through Murray's corner now, the race is about to go green any second now, and it's a good clean start from everyone so far as they head down the pit straight on the short run into Hell Corner. Shirley appearing to be trying to make up a little bit of ground there. There's still a very clean start from everyone so far. I think I can see the likes of Mad Owl and Craig Gilbert Brown a little bit further down the field as well. Very narrow. Oh, big accident involving Nathaniel Shirley and James Lacey in the Porsche. There's cars going everywhere down the... Oh, dearie me, that is actually quite a big accident on the mountain straight there. Shirley understeering wide into the barriers at Quarry Bend, just to add insult to injury with his damaged BMW, but that was a massive accident there. Absolutely huge. A lot of drivers caught involved in that. James Lacey's already retired to the pits. Hotti's retired to the pits. 3 of the Nissans were taken out in that. I think Mad Owl was involved. He's showing as being in P15 at the moment. So is Gilbert Wood. Still cars coming through the first timing split now. There's Kajowski, Dahlgren, Kostadinov, Al Gartner, Giorgio Minja. There's a Lamborghini pulling over there. That's Gilbert Wood, I think. Very dramatic start to the race here at Bathurst. We're still looking at Shirley's car at the moment. This wounded BMW is playing pinball off the barriers, down the mountain, down through the S's, the Dipper, and into Forest Elbow now. Surprised you can get that thing round a corner, quite frankly. Pulling over to let Kostadinov through, down Conrad Straight. Carapo's in the pits, Hottie's in the pits, Shepherd's in the pits, Brooks in the pits. It might actually honestly be quicker and easier to list who isn't in the pits after that incident, quite honestly. Meanwhile, blissfully unaware as to what manner of carnage was going on behind them, we're currently looking at Nate Newcomer in third place at the moment. Currently going over the mountain now is McDonald in fourth, Join in fifth, Plate sixth, Gomez seventh, Kruger eighth. Shirley has somehow crawled the BMW round into the pits. They're down in 20th at the moment, having been passed by Reitzmer. Wow, that was a very dramatic start indeed. Warden's currently leading by 1.5 seconds from Crawford Brown, and then it's Nate Newcomer here in the slipstream of the Lexus and the big Nissan. Coming up to some lapped traffic now as one of the Nissans. That might be Birch getting out of the way there. Coming down the pit straight now and into Hell Corner. On towards the mountain straight for the start of lap 3. Of course, the drivers who have had to pit for repairs, this won't count towards their 2 pit stops as the repairs were undertaken outside of the pit window. So this is not going to help them at all. Currently looking at Hugo Gomez. Was thinking about a move there on MO plate into Quarry Bend. Heading up to the cutting now. And heading over the mountain. There you go. Now Crawford with a bit of pressure on here from Nate at the moment. As they head down through Forest Elbow. There's George McDonald in 4th place in the Aston Martin. There's Reitzmer. Looking at Billy Hutchinson in the Porsche. There's Dan Birch. He's very stricken Nissan. Shirley also in the pits as well. Same for Carapo. Hottie appears to be back out on track though. Here's Adam Kozłowski in the Nissan. Has one of the Aston Martins behind him. I think that might be either Mad Al or George McDonald. Either way, it's not for position. It's to put him a lap down, and judging by the gaps, he thinks that's more likely to be George McDonald in the Aston. There's Carapo. And Emo Plate's just lost a couple of positions actually to Hugo Gomez and Sam Kruger. Plate pulling away, or rather pulling away from the cars behind him of Joy and Lemke and Toby Atkinson as well. Emo, a little bit of ground to try and maybe make up. The pit window is open. Shirley comes back into the pit, so something not quite right with the BMW. I'll be back in a sec. 1 moment. So that Damien Lowe currently in the pits from 12th place in the Mercedes. Billy Hutchinson, Magnus Dahlgren, Al Gartner all in as well. Shirley and Birch still in the BMW and the Nissan respectively. Currently on board with Emo Plate, who appears to be closing the gap to Sam Kruger. A little bit. Kruger's within half a second of Hugo Gomez, and Al Gartner has already received a drive-through penalty. And okay, I don't know where Eddie Warden was going there. Wow. Clearly went flying somewhat. There's Dan Birch in the Nissan. Bit of ground to try and make up, I think it's fair to say. It's worth noting that when Al Gartner does serve his drive-through penalty from 20th, that won't actually count towards his total number of pit stops. Still have to make another one. Still with Dan Birch as he hustles the Nissan over the mountain. Meanwhile, it's showing Nate Newcomer from Crawford Brown, McDonald, Join, Gomez, Kruger, Plate, Joy, Atkinson and Lemke in the top 10. So I have no idea what's happened to Eddie Warden to have dropped out of the top 10 altogether. I think he might have had some kind of connection issue or something. Judging by the way his car suddenly went a-flying. And Jack Alexander doesn't appear to be on track in the top 25 either at the moment. So that remains to be seen as to whether he's decided to merely treat this as a test session. Wait, Sergio Lemke in 10th is actually the highest place of the drivers to have made a pit stop so far. Gartner in to serve his drive-through penalty. Through Murray's corner now comes Crawford Brown in second place. Really needs the traditional inverted plant pot light on the roof of that Lexus, or at least paint. They have the kind of lights they stick on the old aerial to be in blue. The true police car effect. Kostadinov's actually just made his second and final pit stop. He's down in 16th at the moment. It's currently a 25 seconds between Lemke and Atkinson, another 22 between Lemke and Damien Lowe. Both drivers quite lucky to get through fairly unscathed in the incident on lap 1, shall we say. Mad Al coming into the pits there in the Aston Martin. Hits the speed limiter nice and early, not wanting to risk getting a penalty. As indeed you saw as the speedo went green to indicate that he was on the speed limiter in first. Eddie Warden showing us being in the pits now in 21st place in the Lamborghini. I'm wondering what has happened to him, unfortunately. Currently on board with Sam Kruger in the Mercedes in 6th place at the moment. Now on board with Hugo Gomez, who no doubt has his fan club on in the YouTube chat this evening. And Eddie, in fact, has actually just pointed out in the last couple of minutes on the YouTube chat that his game had crashed, unfortunately, so That's why he's currently showing as down in 23rd place and in the pits. Real shame indeed, as been phenomenally quick during qualifying. Was having a very strong run in the race as well, and actually given what had happened at the start of the race, was in a very, very good position indeed to pick up a lot of points for Lamborghini in the Constructor standings. Coming on board with Joao Carapo in the McLaren, 23rd place at the moment. He's one of the drivers who was also involved in the incident at the start of the race, and in fact is still currently showing as being just ahead of Eddie. Right now there's Eddie's Lamborghini parked up at the front of the pits near pit exit. Last lap before his game crash was actually his fastest lap of the race as well, for good measure. He's clearly in a car and driver, or in a very, very good position indeed, and clearly very comfortable with the car to be able to push it as hard as he was through here. Mad Al in the Aston Martin just in front of Nate's newcomer. This is not for position, as the blue flags are indicating. It's because, as Mad Al pulls over and backs off, because Nate is leading in the, I say the, should rather be more like excuse me, ye old Jaguar, with an E on the end of old for good measure. Excuse me. Harry Hottie in 21st at the moment. Back to what's left of the Lamborghini. But Nissan and Lamborghini were both expecting to probably have a very good haul this weekend. And unfortunately, that has all gone somewhat awry. Auden in 25th at the moment is still ahead of some of the other drivers who are involved in the incident on lap 1. There's Damien Lone 11th, Sam Kruger currently in 6th. So Mercedes having a strong run so far here. There's Wrightsman 12th in the Nissan. There's Nate Newcomer in the lead in ye old grandfather clock, because it's about the same size as one. The big Jaguar. Lamborghini of Hottie just passing Eddie Warden's Lamborghini. There's Crawford Brown in the Lexus in second place there. About 1 and a bit seconds behind. We'll see now. It's actually going to be a little bit more than that, I think. More like 2 or maybe even 3 seconds. I think must have caught traffic at the wrong place. In fact, it's more 5 and a bit seconds. So very much caught traffic in the wrong place there, unfortunately. Bathurst, of course, is such a phenomenally narrow track in some places, especially over the top of the mountain, down through the S's, the Dipper, and all that. So if you catch traffic in the wrong place, you either have to really send it and hope that the person you're trying to pass or lap is willing to oblige. Oh, you're just gonna have to be patient. And of course, remember back to the Bathurst 12 Hours a few years ago now, where Matt Campbell and Jake Dennis battling away for the lead, and Campbell managed to very much thread the needle in his Porsche run by Bamber's team, in fact, and sent it at Forest Elbow. There's Harry Hottie having a bit of a moment there on the mountain. Actually, quite a big moment, in fact. He did hit the wall quite hard there coming out of the cutting, I believe. Big old hits there for him. There's George McDonald in his plain matte black unliveried Aston Martin. There's MO plate right on the bumper of Kruger now. There's Gomez. There's Kruger. There's plate. So gap for battle for fourth starting to close back up a bit. This could get quite tasty indeed. Sun beginning to set slowly over New South Wales, Australia. Emo not quite close enough to be able to just send it on the brakes into Murray's corner. Down the pit straight now towards Hell Corner and onto Mountain Straight. She is uphill. I'm nitpicking somewhat. I think Emo got a slightly better exit there than Kruger. Kruger did take quite a bit of curb there on the exit. Though the Mercedes does appear to have somewhat superior straight line speed. So that kind of balances that out. And the Ferrari, I assume, is a bit quicker on this section of the track over the mountain. So yeah, this could be an interesting one. Excuse me. So, Ewan has come into the pits from 9th place. Chris Brook in from 22nd in the McLaren. Currently looking at Sam Kruger in the Mercedes. This is the closest battle on track at the moment. Ooh, looks like the Mercedes was actually bottoming out there through Forest Elbow. See why the sparks coming out from the back of the car. Seems to me they're running quite a low suspension setup on that Merc. Through into the chase now. Of course, that kink at the start of the chase is almost nothing in a GT3 car. One of the big V8 supercars, now, on the other hand, it is a bit more of a test of commitment, I think it is fair to say. Doing a pretty good job in 10th at the moment in the McLaren, having made both of his pit stops. So, trying to work out roughly where that should put him as things stand. However, it is worth noting that the pit lane here at Bathurst is actually quite short as well. So, that's not. So it's not going to make as much difference as at some tracks, like Spa, for example, where the race was held last weekend. Kruger starting to pull away somewhat from the Ferrari, so I'm wondering if the Ferrari is maybe having some tyre wear issues. As I say that, Emo closes up the gap somewhat through the first part there. Headlights really are ablaze now. It's starting to get dark and a little bit darker. And in fact, at this rate, the race should be finishing under the lights. Currently with Niels Ewan.
Come race with me at RWB.
We're on board with Niels Ewan. Now we're back on board with Magnus Dahlgren in the Audi. Excuse me. So, Nate has dropped down the field by a few positions because he's come into the pits to do the first of his mandatory pit stops. Do a little bit of an update in a moment or two's time. We currently ride on board with Niels Ewan as he heads up Mountain Straight now. And coming in to Griffin's Bend. Heading up through the cutting over Griffin's Mount now and into Reed Park. Gonna come into next right hand here, which is Solomon Park, and as I say that, we cut to Bernard Reitzmer in the Nissan. Lemke's in the pits making his final stop. Kozłowski's made his final stop. From probably about anyone outside the top 10. There's going to be some tales of woe this evening from the earlier incident. Craig Gilbert-Wood in the Lamborghini, another driver who was involved in the carnage at the start of the race, caused by a coming together between Nathaniel Shirley and James Lacey. Both of whom ended up having a very, very sizable accident on the Mountain Straight, which just caused a game of pinball, really, as everyone was bouncing off the walls, off each other, and there were some very, very heavily damaged cars. as well. And just having a quick look through the Discord server, there was some fairly lengthy looking pit stops as well. Ammo plate coming into the pits for what he hopes is going to be measured, one which is going to be measured in seconds and not minutes. Jack Alexander unfortunately also said that his game crashed when going to the grid, and that explains why there was a gap on the front row then. And that's because the game actually didn't remember that he had in fact qualified the Porsche in second. And with someone, from what I can deduce, using some good old-fashioned journalism, someone was slow, so the person behind them steered into James Lacey's car, which then sent him into, I think, Nathaniel Shirley's car, and then caused the incident, I think it's fair to say. Crawford Brown in from the lead of the race. Lights well and truly on now. The floodlights on the pitch straight, noticeably visible. It's going to be a real challenge actually over the top of the mountain, because you're only limited by what you can see through your headlights, and of course you've got not an awful lot of runoff area and some whacking great big concrete walls either side of you, so that's going to be challenging to say the least for the drivers. Yeah, trying to pick out your line in a situation like that is quite difficult actually. In fact, for the real life Bathurst 12 hours, of course, they don't actually have night practice either, so the only running in the dark is actually at the start of the race. So you basically stick your most experienced and fastest driver in the car, and I mean, I hope they've been eating a lot of carrots. Or are already very, very awake. Both preferably, I mean, you know. McDonald leading from Gomez, Nate Newcomer in third, Kruger fourth, Brown fifth, Joy sixth, Plate seventh, Ewan eighth, Atkinson ninth, and Damien Lowe rounding out the top 10 at the moment. And coming into cutting once more, very tricky corner actually, so you've got quite a fast kink, and you kind of almost have to trail brake slightly on the way in and then hit the brakes a lot harder for the second part. So it's where, if I remember correctly, there was a pile up during the 1,000 kilometers back in 2005, I think it was. So yeah, that was that actually led to the track being blocked somewhat because of how narrow it is, and that was interesting moment, no doubt. Hugo Gomez making his first pit stop. past one of the Nissans. That was Dan Birch coming in. Many laps down now. He's about 3 laps or so off the lead, so he's on lap 14 as we speak. Currently looking at Gomez in the big M4. Now here's Billy Hutchinson in the highest placed Porsche after what happened earlier on. Craig Gilbert-Wood in the Lamborghini there. A little bit further down the field. I know we did top 10 run through earlier. It's currently Reitzmer 11th ahead of Magnus Dahlgren. Mad Owl in 13th ahead of Billy Hutchinson, Todor Kostadinov, Sergio Lemko, Craig Gilbert-Wood, Adam Kozłowski, Giorgio Minga and Harry Hottie. Then we have Al Gartner, Chris Brook, Joao Carapo and Dan Birch. And Charger is asking YouTube chat if I have man flu. Hugo Gomez and Sam Kruger and Emo Plate. Battle's been going on all race so far. Kruger drops back a little bit. There's Emo just coming into turn 1 now. Yes, I do have man flu to a degree. Hence why the break I had to skip last week because of the slight issue of not being able to really talk. Not ideal when you're a commentator. Yeah, commentators ideally need to be able to talk, so probably for the best that I wasn't trying to commentate while being even less capable of putting together a sentence than I was at the end of Catalonia that weekend before. Properly dark over the top of the mountain now, and currently going to start getting very tasty indeed for the drivers. Fortunately, this also means trying to actually make out who's where or who's involved a little bit more interesting, as we're kind of having to go off of the headlights and tail lights. But nevertheless, I know for a fact we're looking at Sam Kruger in the Mercedes. McDonald in the pits from the lead. So is Crawford Brown from third. And this trying to work out whose headlights and tail lights are which, excuse me, is made a lot easier by the fact that when you watch a lot of GT and endurance racing, you do work this out quite quickly. I think it's fair to say. Kruger in from 6th place at the moment. Carapo in 23rd. Minga doing a good job in the Mercedes in 19th place. And Carapo sparking away in the McLaren as it bottoms out once more. I do wonder what must be running a very low and stiff suspension setup on that car for it to be bottoming out like that. And meanwhile, there's a Lamborghini running a little bit wide at the exit of turn 1, which is Hottie in 20th place. And just behind him on the track is Chris Brook. For Al Gartner is about 20 seconds or so behind Hottie at the moment. Gilbert Wood in the pits there in the... or just briefly leaving the pits in Mercedes. Nate coming in for his final pit stop. McDonald, Gomez, Plate, and Joy and Reitzmer and Carapo all still need to serve theirs. Reitzmer in right now for his. About 5 minutes to go on the pit window, which means that really there's going to be, depending on where McDonald, Gomez, Plate, Joy and Carapo are, maybe 2 more laps they can get it done by, given that a lap here is about 2:4.25. So, yeah, Plate in now for his stop. Same with well, Brown's already served his. Excuse me. It's still difference for making a pit stop is about 20 seconds or so. So, unless McDonald can pull about 6.5 seconds in the next lap and a half, he might well lose the lead to newcomer. And maybe even Gomez and Brown, because Crawford's got the gap down to just a few tenths of a second. Presumably well aware of the fact that Gomez still needs to pit once more. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Nate Newcomer there in second place at the moment. In fact, the pace of the field has slowed down a little bit owing to the fact that it is now a lot harder to try and find where one's apex is. Carapo's actually just come in from 23rd place. No doubt he'll probably be staying in 23rd. As Hugo Gomez comes in, Joy is going to leave it another lap, it seems, in the 54 Lexus. So he'll definitely have to pit next time around. Same for McDonald. Oh no, in fact, Joy does come into the pits now. He was just 18 seconds behind. Right, never mind. Yeah, McDonald, on the other hand, will need to actually pit at the end of this lap, lest he end up with a penalty for having not served his final pit stop. Meanwhile, aside from Al Gartner's drive-through penalty earlier on, which I can only imagine was for track limits, nobody so far has received a penalty for speeding in the pit lane, to my knowledge. Of course, now that I say this, George McDonald is inevitably going to end up getting a penalty for speeding in the pit lane. You know, commentator's curse and all that jazz. Currently trying to see where he is on track at the moment. I think he's on the Comrade Straight somewhere. Currently looking at Wrightsma at the moment. Trying to find where McDonald is. I think he is in the pits. A few dots showing as being in the pits. There's Todor Kostadinov. Been setting some quick lap times despite getting caught up in the incident earlier on. God, that Nissan in front of him really bottoming out over the curb at the exit of Murray's Corner there. McDonald has in fact made his final pit stop on time and hasn't got any time penalties, so I think this might be the first time that's happened this series that nobody's been penalised for speeding in the pits. This season, rather, excuse me. I'm sure it's happened in plenty of other, a few other times in the Constructors' Championship. But at the end of all that, Nate Newcomer has cycled back into the lead ahead of Crawford Brown by 4.5 seconds. McDonald down to third, Emo Plate fourth, Hugo Gomez fifth, Atkinson sixth, Kruger, Joy, June and Lowe rounding out the top 10. Although as I say that, Lowe has just been overtaken by Mad Al. Harry Hottie is in the pits in the Lamborghini, so something's either not quite right with that car or he's hit the wall. Meanwhile, one of the McLarens behind us just had to take avoiding action to avoid slamming into the back of Carapace's car. And I think that, oh crikey, that might have been June. To be fair, I don't think Brooks' car has a white base colour. So, that's going to be quite an interesting one, I think, to see if he pits anytime soon. Join, I think, may have dropped down a position, perhaps. I'm not 100% sure. So Kruger has just crossed second timing split now. There's Billy Hutchinson. Hottie is in the hits as well. Joy has crossed the timing split now in 8th place in the Lexus. Niels Yun, we'll see where he is in a sec. There's Nate Newcomer heading over the mountain now. Yun's dropped back to 12.2 seconds off of Joy. Keep an eye on that, so see if there is actually some damage, perhaps to 37, or whether it was Chris Brook in the 23. June Gapson gone up to 15.1 seconds, so may have been involved. Hutchinson closing in on Wrightsma in the Porsche. There's a Mercedes off there as Lemke goes up into 12th. I think that's Damien Lowe, unfortunately, who's had a bit of an off in the Mercedes, car number 515. Indeed, he was either had quite a big off or was pulling over, although given that he's dropped down behind Kostadinov and Wrightsma, I'm more inclined to say that he has indeed had an off. Unfortunately, on the mountain as well. Gomez still working the wheel hard there. Kostadinov we're on board with now. Al Gartner in the Lamborghini. And back to Kostadinov in the Lexus. Lowe's actually dropped behind the battle for 14th between Reitzmer and Hutchinson. About half a second or so separating the pair of them, so we'll keep an eye on that. Lowe trying to come into the pits, and you see how much lock he's having to put on the car there. So he has hit the wall with quite some force, I think. Certainly enough force to do some fairly major damage to the suspension and steering components on the Mercedes. Hutchinson just dropping back slightly from Reitzmer, but still in 23rd in the Nissan is Dahlgren in the Audi. Down Comrade Straight now, 250 k's an hour indicated on the dashboard. There's Niels Ewan, who, yes, indeed, had a bit of an off earlier because he's dropped back to his last lap was a 2:17, so he's pretty much cruising at this point. You can tell by the damage on his windscreen that he has actually clobbered something at turn 2, trying to avoid Carapo's car. Best lap's a 2:04. His last lap was a 2:17, so something not all 100% on the Mercedes there. There's Al Gartner. There's a car right behind him that was briefly illuminating the rear bumper. Meanwhile, the Hugo Gomez fan club has started to arrive in the YouTube chat. Your lads in 6th place at the moment in the BMW. Hugo Gomez, P. Cess. George McDonald in 3rd. There's Reitzmer in the Nissan. Hutchinson's back to within a few tenths of a second now. And in fact, might actually already be ahead of Reitzmer, given that Reitzmer is showing as being in 15th place. So Toby Atkinson in the Nissan. There's another Nissan in front of him. That might have actually been Reitzmer, I think, or one of the other drivers having to get out of the way quite sharpish. There's a yellow flag for an incident somewhere. In fact, Reitzmer is actually coming into the pits now, so I think his car is also going to be joining the list of cars that will inevitably end up on the classifieds. You know, the usual: one careful owner, never raced or rallied, etc., etc. Yeah, believe that after seeing this. There's Craig Gilbert Wood in the Lamborghini. Clearly in 4th gear over top of the mountain. And there's Reitzmer still in the pits, which says to me that that Nissan is about as broken as my computer is at the moment. Yes, so very broken, in other words. There's Magnus Dahlgren in 11th place in the Audi. Sergio Lemke in the Get Speed Mercedes, which thankfully happens to be bright enough that we can actually tell whose car it is. I mean, there are some advantages to painting the car quite literally bright yellow. Well, if you were to ask one of my friends from my best friends from university, he'd probably tell you that they're green. Although we may have been arguing over a slightly more fluorescent version of the colour during a Zoom pub quiz. Cue quite a lot of swearing, but Nate Newcomer there having to really send it up the inside of the Mercedes of Giorgio Minga. Minga, I think, slightly unaware that Nate was actually coming through, and that's held him up slightly. Crawford not close enough to be able to get the move done at the final corner. And it's going to be Nate Newcomer winning the final race of the season for Jaguar, ahead of Crawford Brown by just 1.1 seconds in the end. Nils Ewan has come home in 10th ahead of Magnus Dahlgren, Sergio Lemke. Giorgio Minja's also crossed the line as well. And now it's a case of waiting. There's McDonald home in third. It's going to be very much a case of waiting because it is a fairly long lap here at Bathurst. So this could take a wee moment or two. Kostadinov's come home in 13th. Emo Plate's going to come home in 4th. Hotty's crossed the line in 21st, Birch in 23rd. Atkinson in P5, Gomez in P6. Kruger 7th. Joy probably going to come home in 8th. Maddow in 9th. Then it's Ewan Dahlgren, Lemke, Kostadinov, Billy Hutchison, and then probably Craig Gilbert Wood, Adam Kajowski, Berno Reitzmer, Al Gartner, Damien Lowe. I think made it out of the pits after his repairs earlier. And then Giorgio Minga, Harry Hottie, Chris Brook, Dan Birch, and Joao Carapo. And I think, judging by the amount of dots left on the circuit, that might in fact round out the field. Currently looking at Maddow at the moment. We were looking at Maddow, now we're looking at Chris Brook. Camera does little pan shots there. There's Chris Brook in his McLaren, and here's Maddow crossing the line now. Well, now. And still waiting on... I was going to say we're still waiting on Reitzman to cross the line, but he's come into the pits. Nissan being somewhat damaged after an incident on the mountain. Wow. What a race. What a race. And what a way to end the season. Now comes the worrying moment where I have to try and do some maths. Either way, Jack Alexander has won the title in the drivers' standings from Crawford Brown. And in the constructors' standings, I think we're probably going to have to wait for that to update, or at the very least we get someone who's a little bit better at maths than I am to have a look into it. But I think Nissan may have done enough to actually beat Porsche in the final round. And Mercedes might also have done enough to leapfrog at least BMW, maybe even Lamborghini, I think. It was a good race for them today. No doubt Jaguar might be moving up slightly as well. So that was the final round of Season 6 of the RWB International Constructors' Championship. Coming up this week, we've got Wreckfest tomorrow. It's always going to be good for a laugh. Then we've got the finale of the Coalition Cup Season 2 in association with TSR, RRL, and SCB Sim Racing. We've also got the Pro Rookie Weekly Ranked Race. On Friday night, we got the NMR powered by RWB TGI Fridays series and the Automobilista All Request deal as well. And then on Saturday evening, we've got, it's always going to be good for a laugh, the RST Competizione series,
the Coalition Cup
for
season
good
2
measure,
in association with TSR,
RRL, and we've
SCB
also
Sim Racing.
got sign-ups still open
also got the
for
Pro
the
Rookie
upcoming
Weekly Ranked
Suzuka
Race.
6
On Friday
hours.
night,
We got the NMR powered by RWB
on the
28th of May, currently
Fridays
67
series
of
and
90
the
grid slots
Automobilista All
taken.
Request deal
Well,
as
thanks
well.
to Nate Newcomer,
And then
as
on
ever,
Saturday,
for
evening,
hosting
we've
the
got-
live stream for us this evening. And massive congrats on the win in the race to Nate and in the championship to Jack Alexander. We'll be back after a few weeks break
still
for
the
Season 7 of the RWB International Constructors Championship. I've been Rob Lomas, and as always, it's bye for now.
Grid slot taken.